I wonder if you could explain how the evaluation of your running back group went from the point that Cam Akers got hurt to deciding that a trade like this was necessary.
Yeah, probably because of the timing of Cam, right? Before camp started, we had time on our side to do two things, right? Try to figure out if we needed to add reinforcement per se, and also time to figure out, right, especially Jake and Xavier, and even Raymond Calais to a certain extent, players that were either drafted this year or were hadn't yet to play the games or haven't yet to be a, what's called a significant or we're going to use August 4th and the practices, the combined practices and the games. And so all those variables led us to last night agreeing to bring Sony Michel to the Rams from the Pats.
Were there other options possible along the way, trades or free agents?
At this point in time, there's always let's call it other options, but early in the down, we identified Sony for many reasons. Number one, being his experience, and experience meaning a player who's carried the ball in big games. In those big games, there's been big moments, big drives, big series. The experience of where he played, how he was coached. So, he was one of those players. If we were going to go the route of experience, he was someone that we were definitely eyeing from the start. And a part of that is the Patriots happen to be pretty dang deep at running back, whether it's their experienced players or even a couple players on their team with less experience that are having really good preseasons, which probably allows them to think, okay, we can make this move. So, but like I said, Kevin, there's always other options, and it's right here. You're looking for, is somebody available now? Is somebody on a team currently? Is there some young player that was drafted this year that might be available? So that's what you're always trying to navigate. That's the nice thing about having preseason games is you can actually sit and watch, and basically every running back who's run the ball in preseason, click of a couple of buttons.
Just quickly, when do you have to make another roster move?
We had to make a roster move really this morning. So technically, 1:00 Pacific, but we ended up releasing Steven Ortel, who was, the vying for the long snapper job here. So,
Stu, Les, besides the experience that you talked about, what made Sony such an appealing addition to this offense? And on top of that, why was trading for him the right move over, say, potentially exploring the free agent market and going with a veteran option?
First part of your question, Sony definitely, that's going to be a complimentary backfield. What he does bring is this element of make a cut, get north and south, and get north and south with some force and the physics that he brings to the table. It's just let's call it a flavor, a genre that we felt like complemented our group. Second part of the I think you could just answer, right? We like actions speak louder than words. We like Sony Michel, and we traded for Sony Michel probably for those reasons that I mentioned before, and also those reasons blended with that specific experience that I'd described earlier.
Jordan?
Hey, Les, just two quick ones, if you don't mind. First, did you guys seek out insight from Thomas Brown at all when you were making this decision through the process of this?
Thomas having the Georgia alumni ties there, he knew the kid personally, so that's definitely anytime you can get right insight within your right own building race, it's probably it's a little more quality than maybe third party insight. That's how I answer that.
And then I'm not sure how closely you can get into this process, but the way that you guys negotiated the terms of this trade, it seemed to me to be maybe a little bit more creative than usual in terms of the package and how it relates to the compensatory picks. How have you seen that and been a part of that type of maybe evolution now that compensatory picks are on the table for such things?
Well, interestingly now, yes, 2017 began to be able to trade compensatory picks, but then now recently there's been an evolution of the rule where, okay, you can't necessarily trade them until you actually awarded them. So we've gone through all of that. So I think us in the NFL is learning how to do that. The nice thing I think compensatory picks do, it's just going to, eventually they're going to be your draft picks. So to be able to trade them and not, instead of not being able to trade them does seem right, like an obvious evolution that has probably evolved for the good over time.
Thanks.
Gary?
Hey, Les, how do you, with the addition of him, how do you feel about kind of the makeup of the offense and, while we're talking about also the defense, the roster in general?
We're definitely jacked about where we're at as a roster, I think, and we're jacked about what we want to accomplish in 21 and what we might be able to, and then you do get a curveball, and we hadn't got our last curveball, but we hadn't faced our last adversity for sure. But when you lose someone like Cam Akers and what he brings to the table, it definitely puts a dent in the roster. As I said, you're not replacing Cam at all. He's probably at a level right, whether it's running the ball, catching the ball, and then just probably some intangible type leadership kind of glue qualities that Cam has. That's just tough loss. But we definitely felt like if we could add the right person with the right experience, that would let's call it help patch things up and get our roster back to where we wanted it when we came in. But every day there's going to be changes, Gary, whether it's a young guy making a move, whether it's right, unfortunately, someone getting nicked up for a long period of time like Cam, or even a short period of time. So those things fluctuate. But in August, about right now, we're about as this is about, you can't do a lot with your roster this time of year. Now there might be at cut downs we could add players, but a lot of times those players, right, they don't know our system, so there may be more future type picks if they're young. And then there's times where you got to go out and go, okay, we got to add a veteran, and we got to teach him right the system as quick as possible, and help, and that player help us patch things up. So those things evolve daily.
And just since we have you here, and I appreciate you're making yourself available, I want to just change the subject for a moment. And what's going on with your punter and with Johnny Hecker in that situation? Are you guys, what's happening there?
He's on COVID IR, and I don't even know artists. I don't even know our rules anymore. Last year we couldn't talk about COVID IR, so
we just say he's on COVID IR.
Yeah, I know there's
whatever I say from here is probably wrong.
Right. I meant more. You've made a move here with the get a running back. You have a situation with your punters, with the veteran, obviously Johnny Hecker, and you've signed Corey. So I'm just curious what your plan is as you guys get closer to the deadline here to cut your roster to 53 players, how you see that playing out.
Well, in reality, right, when Johnny's not being able to be a part of practice, and and games, right? You know, what he's brought to the table is on the table. There's not much he can do, but he's done a lot in this league with us, obviously, during his career. So, and then, you know, we get Corey back and he'll continue competing through the game. And like every roster decision, you know, there's decisions to be made. But we were fortunate this year in having a punter with let's call it Johnny's resume, capability, all of that. And with Corey coming, he was restricted. I believe he was a restricted free agent that they didn't tender. So we usually try to attack that market. And that's an interesting market because everybody gears up for unrestricted free agency. But, you know, it's kind of the Roby Coleman, Nikhil Roby Coleman rule, right? He might have been a regime change or what have you. He didn't get tendered. So all of a sudden you have usually guys with experience, with play time, still young, upside, all of a sudden on the street. And we try to, you know, monitor that when the bell rings. When most everyone on this call is monitoring, right, the major headlines, it's that untendered restricted free agent market that, you know, we do like to make sure we don't forget about. Corey was someone that we liked and felt like it would be definitely beneficial and healthy to bring him here.
Lindsay?
Hey, Les, thanks for taking the time. This might be more of a Sean question, but I'll give it a whirl with you. With Sony, do you guys see him coming in and eventually being a starting back? Do you see him kind of being a complementary back to Daryl, like a 1-2 kind of guy? How do you guys envision that?
Yeah, that's a good question for Sean. But I don't think we ever really talk who starts, who doesn't, things like that. I think big picture conceptually, we felt like, okay, if we could add someone like Sony, you know, a veteran, number one, come here, learn the offense. Number two, be a compliment to Daryl and Jake and Xavier, the guys we have here. And then from there, right, figure out what each player does best and then go into Chicago. But because he's getting here, very well aware that we got about 19, and Sean says days, maybe it's 18 now until we kick off. So goals to get him here this evening, and right, him and Thomas get together and start learning that playbook as soon as possible. And then like anything, the roles will probably evolve, but Sean may have a more specific answer.
Got it. Thank you.
Siciliano.
Less realistically, how many jobs are you undecided on before the game Saturday? Are there decisions that truly have not yet been made?
You know, a lot of them have been made. Andrew, I probably couldn't give you an exact number, but there are some unsung jobs on the line, right? Like, again, the 48-man roster, and you're right, who earns a job, you know, in one of the let's call it core four, the special teams, right? Those are they might not be battling for, let's call it a 53rd or 53 spot as we call it, but they could be battling for you know, a helmet, jersey, and shoulder pads on game day. So, but there's still definitely some jobs open, and us in football will always, if we would say the right, that we're probably 90-something%, let's call it complete in our evaluations. But I do know this: when there's another test or there's another opportunity to watch film, things definitely change with another game to play, because those games they're competitive moments, and they're definitely measurable. So things are going to change in Denver in some form or fashion. And what's interesting too, Andrew, there could be, unfortunately, like with Raymond Calais, someone who might have been earning a spot on the team, might have been earning a jersey on game day because of special teams, and then all of a sudden, right, he goes down with an unfortunate injury, and it's those guys that maybe were behind him and not necessarily at the same position, but even on special teams that it's a tough thing, right? Those guys are counting heads and wow, am I going to make it? And to be able to be mentally tough enough, right? To stay in it, even though when you're looking around the room going, I don't think I make it. And then all of a sudden, wow, there's some unforeseen attrition, but that kid stayed in it. That kid persevered. And next thing you know, he makes a couple plays. And when he thought maybe he was counted out, he's back in. And then the key there is being able to be level-headed, stay in it, even when you think you might be out, because every day is a chance to put something on your resume, try to help the Rams and carve out a contributing role. That's the neat thing about this. And I'm telling you, it's hard. I sometimes I don't wish it upon my own kids, right? Everybody reaches their dream in some way of getting a chance to fight for one of these jobs, but to sit there every day and know that you don't really have one yet, like you can taste the dream, but it's not there. The stress, the anxiety that these young men go through. Not everyone. Some people know they're on the team or what have you, different stresses, right? Or they're getting ready to, to really, really contribute, maybe on offense or defense. But neat part of the year, man, all these young men deserve credit getting to this week and persevering through it. Somehow you spark some type of soapbox there, Andrew. Don't know how or why, but maybe you're a good interviewer.
You did a great job.
Great.
Last year, you had 3 running backs who played quite extensively. One of them's gone, one of them's injured now. You replaced him with one veteran now with Sony. Did you feel like you saw enough as a personnel standpoint from Xavier or Jake that if Sean decides to play 3 running backs again this year, that one of those guys could take that role?
Yeah, I think we've definitely seen, we've definitely seen enough to go, okay, yeah, and let's take with Jake and Xavier, right? Okay, this is how they can contribute, right? Let's call it on Sunday, Sunday night for the Rams, and this is how they might be able to contribute, 4 or 5 weeks later. So we've definitely identified that, and again, now it comes in phases and stages. This may be a Sunday night against the Bears role. This might be more of a future role, and then I think Gary asked a question. All of a sudden, wow. Some unforeseen adversity occurs or attrition, and wow, the role just changed, and it's a more important role.
It's been a couple of years, but what do you remember about Sony in the Super Bowl? What lingers from you about how he played? He had a pretty big game.
I do remember. Boy, the only thing I remember about the Super Bowl is we had less. The math didn't work out for us. So, I try not to remember that, but prepare. What I do know this, and I just be in conceptually generally, New England, right, had Julian Edelman, Gronk, Tom Brady at the time. You're thinking, right, high power, flying offense. But when you do play New England, and Sony was a part of that, right, they're going to come north and south at you. They're going to make you be disciplined in your gaps, and not only be disciplined in your gaps, but be pretty strong and tough in those gaps. So when we were preparing for Sony, then you felt him even on film, right? Where, okay, there's the cut, and he's getting north and south, and linebackers meeting him, and maybe he's getting, a yard and a half, 2 more yards after the linebacker meets him. So that's Sony. That's kind of who they are, as an, conceptually as an offense, whether Tom Brady's there or not.
Wrap this up with you, Ken.
But I keep going back to that score, Greg. That's what I remember.
Les, just following.
It was tied in the fourth quarter. You can taste it. Thank you for bringing that up.
Just following up Gary's questions about the punters. Is that decision made based on what you know now? Or is there a possibility that you're going to cut loose Johnny Hecker?
That decision's not made in I think big picture, right? If we decided to move on from someone like Johnny Hecker, right, that's done what he's done for the Rams, that's not just a kind of yes no decision. There's a lot of discussion into that. So no way is that one made at all.
Okay, thank you.
Les, we appreciate you, sir.
All right, thank you guys.